Hello friends, and welcome back to the Prince Armory Academy. Be sure to stick around to the end of the video for a preview of the Gen 2 designs. I designed some tools to help you in your leather crafting and cosplay projects, and in this video, I'll be 3D printing these forming domes, testing a few print settings, and showing how you can use them. If you've been following along with any of our armor tutorials, you know that many of these builds require some shape and wet forming, and these forms will be a very affordable alternative to the metal domes that I've been using. If you already own a 3D printer, these will be a great easy addition to your toolset, and if you don't own a 3D printer but have considered it, I would encourage you to check out the printer featured in this video. This video is sponsored by AnkerMake, and I'll be setting up and using their new M5 3D printer for this project. The unboxing and setup was incredibly easy. I only had to join the gantry frame to the platform with a few screws and plug in a few wires. I mounted the filament holder to the top position, but it also has a side mount option. I like the overall design. It looks sharp and well thought out. It also feels solid with a good weight to it. So far so good. The app setup was super easy. Just a few clicks, make an account, pair it with Bluetooth, enter the pin it provides, and pair it to your network. No need for USB sticks, but it does have a USB port if you don't want to connect to it wirelessly. When I finished setting up the app, it prompted me to update the firmware with a single click directly in the app, and I have to say I really love convenience features like this. It will also perform a self-leveling when you first set it up. It's very thorough and takes a few minutes, but you only have to do it once. Next, I installed their slicer software. I found it very easy to use, and it has an expert mode if you want to dial in and tinker with your settings. But for the purposes of this video, I'm just using their easy mode and fast settings to see how it does straight out of the box. One other thing I really like here is the live view with the control panel. You can check in on the progress right from your app or PC. I have the printer in the other room, but I can keep tabs on it in case something happens to the prints. It also has a setting that will detect failed prints and pause it. It even has a resume on power fail feature and a runout sensor that will pause your print if you run out of filament mid-print. The filament I'm using is also from AnkerMake and is called PLA+, which is their own blend of filament. For my first print, I'll be making this half-sphere forming dome. I also printed a few variations from 10% to 100% infill so I could test what worked the best, which I'll talk about in just a minute. The print had no issues at all. The print was also really fast, which is no surprise as one of the selling points of this device is its speed, which is up to 500 mm per second in fast mode. And the magnetic build plate is a nice touch that lets the print pop right off with a little flex. I think the print finish is great. The white filament makes it harder to show the quality on video, but it's very smooth and consistent. The seam line is pretty common for filament printers, especially on round and smooth faces like this. It can be sanded down if desired, and I think there's some custom settings that can reduce this as well. This first round of prototypes will come with a variety of shapes for different purposes. The design is very bare bones and is just meant to get the job done. I'll add to the collection in time, but these first shapes will aid you in shaping leather or other materials. And if you have any requests for tools or shapes that you think I should add to this collection, leave a comment and let me know. But why would you need these? Adding some shape to your leather armor projects can improve both the looks and the function, and it's something I try to do in most of my designs. Many of the patterns in our academy require some degree of shaping on the parts. I personally normally use a metal planishing set which works great for forming leather and to set rivets. It's a great value and worthwhile early investment, especially since I do this as a business, but I understand not everyone will be able to justify spending over $400 on a tool like this. And if you don't want to spend anything at all, you can often get by improvising with household objects, like a baseball for example, but that may not also have the consistency you need or have other limitations, and they're certainly not designed to help with leathercraft projects. So my motivation to make these is to provide an affordable alternative for forming aids that are specifically designed for leather, armor, and cosplay projects. If you're wondering what infill settings to use for this, it will depend on how you want to use these forms. I printed a few of these domes at different degrees of infill, from 10% to 100%. In my case, I really like the idea of being able to set a rivet or to punch a hole, so any that I plan to use will be printed at 100%. But how much abuse can these prints take? I did some testing, and if you just want to use these forms to stretch leather over by hand, I think you can get away with 20% infill, and it'd also be very fast and cheap to print. The tests at 20 and 50% both show easy damage to the structure of the dome with even a single hit, so there's no way that's going to stand up over time. 100% infill, however, feels very solid, and there's a satisfying weight to it. It appears to be able to stand up to some abuse. But it's not indestructible, of course. Not surprisingly, you can see with the metal hole punch it leaves a mark in the dome, but this is actually desirable because you wouldn't prefer your cutting instrument to be the one that takes away the damage. Over time with a lot of use, you can expect the surface to wear out like any cutting board would, but these domes would be very easy to sand down and repair, or cheap enough to reprint when needed. I plan on printing an extra dome specifically to be used as a rounded cutting board. There have been so many times where I needed a dome surface like this that I can punch into, but the piece is already shaped so I have to drill it instead. The filament material is sturdy enough to serve as an anvil, but soft enough to where it will not damage your tools. You can also just grab a scrap piece of leather to use as a buffer and prolong the life of the dome and the hole punches. I printed one additional dome at 10% infill. I wanted to see what would happen with a full swing from a mallet. For science, of course. It's good to get an intuitive feel of the limitations and thresholds of the materials. And you can see the results for yourself. These results are to be expected with such a hollow infill. I wish I had a slow-mo camera for this, but as you can see the impact kind of Thanos snapped the upper portion of the dome. Okay, with that out of our system, let's go over these first designs and show how they would be used. If you're new here and you're not familiar with some of our past builds and tutorials, here's what we're going for. When vegetable tan leather is shaped while it's wet and allowed to dry, it will retain that shape pretty well, and this ends up being more rigid. And this is subjective, but shaped stuff tends to look better than the flat stuff. The one I would expect you to use the most is probably this half-sphere dome. You'll probably use this for the majority of your shaping, and it will come in really handy when you need to set a rivet or punch a hole on a piece that's not flat. When shaping the leather, you'll wet the leather first. Not too soggy, not too dry. The ideal moisture content is something you'll get the hang of over time, but in simple terms, a medium dampness where there's a little firmness in the leather, but you don't want it too wet and soggy because it won't hold its shape. And to form the leather, you simply stretch it over the dome and work it incrementally with your hands. You won't get the full shape in one go, it's something you build up to, and you'll see me demonstrate this technique in many of our other tutorials if you'd like to get more insight on this. The shorter dome is the same principle, but it'll let you get a more shallow shape, and it too will be great for rivets and punching holes. I expect to also use this a lot when planishing seam lines. The next block is a cylinder with a flat top. There's times when you need to raise your piece just a little bit, but you still need the surface to be flat. It'll also be great for setting rivets, and it can even serve as a riser for the other forms. This narrow dome would be really good if you need to isolate a small area to raise or to get a really good stretch in the leather. You'll be able to get some good leverage as you stretch the leather over this dome. This curved block is an experimental design, but I'm looking forward to using it in future projects. There have been many times where I could have used a block like this with a concave and convex curve that would help me make crisp lines or refine the shapes of complex pieces. So if you'd like to print these domes yourself, I'm going to offer the full set as a bundle, and this will include some more shapes I plan to add a little bit later. You'll be able to get the files at our Academy, and for a limited time, if you're a supporter of our Patreon or Discord tiers, you'll be able to grab them there. And if you're not ready to invest in a 3D printer, but you want to have these forms printed for you, we may do some limited batches or work with an external business to print them on demand. So check the description of this video for links and to see what our most current options are. These basic forms will be free for anyone wanting to print these at home and to use them for forming leather or for other crafts. If you want something a little more fancy with some additional shapes and extra features, I'm also working on the Gen 2 designs, and you can pick those up at our Academy. I'm printing these new designs in black, which makes it a little easier to see the print quality. I would say that my experience with the M5 3D printer has been rock solid. Setting it up was effortless, and I was able to start my first print within minutes. Their app and software was very easy to use. It has all the bells and whistles you could want from a modern 3D printer, and I've kept it running constantly since unboxing it, and I've not had a single issue. The faster print speed on this device dramatically sped up the production of these forms, even at 100% infill. I have a lot of other leather tool designs you'll probably want a 3D printer for in the future, so if you'd like to pick up this AnkerMake M5 3D printer for your own shop, I'll have links below in the description, and I'm sure it'll make a great addition to your shop. Oh, and one more thing. Keep in mind we have a very active crafting community on our Discord server, and there's even a channel specifically for 3D printing. I'll be uploading a number of free designs along the way there too. If you use or print any of these forms, please give your feedback, ideas, or requests in the comments so that I can improve upon this in the future. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this. Thanks for watching. I'll be back soon with another video.